Welcome back to the Inland Empire Workers' Compensation Lawyer live stream podcast. My name is Attorney Alexander Napolin. I'm here with Attorney George Ubuado. We're your hosts every Sunday at 3 o'clock on this channel for a new discussion about workers' compensation law and employment law in California. If you work in California, you should subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on these important weekly discussions. And if you have specific questions, be sure to go to the search bar, check out the other content on our channel, and listen to those discussions that you want to learn more about. Remember, it's not legal advice. This is general information only that's meant to help you, but it's not legal advice. For legal advice, you need to reach out to us by dialing our injury hotline at 844-984-8414. This is episode number 11 on California workers' compensation death benefits for dependents and family members of injured workers. So if you're a family member or a household member of someone who's been injured and has died at work or because of work, then you should check out this discussion because we're going to address who qualifies, how much they qualify for, and what to do next if you believe that you're entitled to benefits. Let's get right into it. Let's discuss death benefits.
Death benefits are important because many times if an injured worker dies because of their work injury, it's more often than not, they were actually taking care of a family or taking care of a loved one or maybe a spouse or a live-in girlfriend or boyfriend or partner. So these people that they were taken care of are now also left without any income because they were relying on the injured worker. So these people, the court wants to take care of them. That's why they provide death benefits to whoever they can ascertain were relying on the injured worker at the time of the injury. Now, of course, this person just can't be anybody that the injured worker was giving support to. It has to be individuals that qualify as total or partial dependents.
So maybe your spouse has passed away. That's going to qualify. Right. You're not just a friend. You're someone who depends on the financial income of your spouse.
Right, and that's one good example. These benefits are going to be in direct correlation of the relationship of that person as a dependent to the dead injured worker, as well as how much they relied on them for support, how much financial support was given to this person. So those are the two main issues. What the relationship was, do they qualify, and how much support was given. And are they a total dependent or a partial dependent? So we're going to get into that now. It's also important to note, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, but when someone dies and there's burial expenses, it's sometimes a hard thing to come up with for the family that's left behind. So workers' compensation does provide up to $10,000 for burial expenses for the family that's responsible for paying that after the injured worker has died. So who gets the benefits? Let's talk about total dependents. Total dependents are a deceased employee's spouse who earns $30,000 or less in the last 12 months before the death, and the children who are under 18. Those are the ones that are considered to be total dependents. Right, Alex?
Those are certainly going to receive death benefits if it's shown that the death is a result of an industrial injury.
Yeah, and quickly, I want to mention that in the last 2 years, we've gone through a lot as a country and as a world. COVID has kind of wreaked havoc on a lot of families, and there has been a lot of deaths tied into COVID. If you had a family member, let's say it was your father, and he was working and he contracted COVID at the time while he was working, and it was proven that because of work, he contracted COVID and he passed away, this would be a prime example of people that are entitled to death benefits. The remaining wife, the remaining kids, these would be the total dependents, the kids under the age of 18. And once again, a spouse that is making $30,000 or less within the last year. So if you're making $60,000, $70,000, might not be a dependent under California labor code. Correct, Alex?
That's correct. But children are.
Children under 18
regardless of income of the surviving spouse
Right.
or surviving parent.
Correct.
But if it's a spouse, you can't have made more than $30,000 in the last year in order to be considered a total dependent,
Right.
entitled to a lump sum payment under the death benefit.
And it's also important to note that these determinations regarding dependents are based on the facts at the time of the injury, not the facts at the time of death. We talked about an example, which would be a spouse. We're going to discuss several other examples. The list is not exhaustive, so there might be other examples. But for any person to be considered a dependent, they must be a member of the household. So that's important to note. So a relative or immediate family or their spouse, a member of the household. And it's good to note that because it could be that maybe the injured worker that passed away had a girlfriend that lived with him and she had children. Those would be considered dependents because they lived in the same household. Other people that might be considered dependents is, once we talked about children, biological, stepchildren, adopted children, siblings. We already talked about a spouse, in-laws, grandparents, parents, nephews, uncles, nieces, aunts, all those people. If they live in the same household and they were dependent on that injured worker that passed away, they could be considered dependents.
A lot of minors of the injured worker, you're going to receive maybe even more money than $350,000 because those minors will continue to receive
Right.
the temporary disability rate until they turn 18 years old.
Right.
If you're living in that home, you are receiving a benefit. And that's where, if you're a member of the household, you're going to be considered. Now, if you're not a member of the household, but let's say you're a child and you were receiving money, but you're not a member of the household, you're not living in the house, and you're an immediate relative, I think you could receive some benefits.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. The household rule is possibly more geared towards people that are not immediate relatives, like wife, children. If the children's maybe 16 years old, but he's living with an uncle or an aunt at the time, they could possibly and most likely will receive those death benefits. How much are death benefits? This is where the situation gets really tricky and the calculations get extremely difficult. So it's up to $350,000 for all the dependents. So we do have a cap at $350,000 that will be divided between the dependents, total dependents, partial dependents. It depends on how many there are. So once again, we talked about the $10,000 for the burial expenses, but if it's one dependent only, let's say the injured worker had a husband or wife making less than $30,000 in the last year and they passed away, then that one dependent will receive $250,000. If there are two total dependents, then they will receive $290,000, and there can't be any partial dependents there if there's two total dependents. Now, if there's three or more total dependents, they will split $320,000. And if there's one total dependent and one or more partial dependents, then the total dependent will receive $250,000, and each partial dependent will receive up to $25,000. I know that was a lot of information, but it's just so difficult to ascertain who the dependents are going to be, whether there will be total or partial, and how to combine those two to figure out how much money will be divided and how it will be divided. That was just kind of an overview. If you have questions or you might be in the situation, definitely reach out to us and we can explain it a little bit more.
It's not legal advice about who qualifies. That can only happen after you engage a lawyer. But if you know someone that you depend on or someone in your household has died and you believe it's due to work, could be COVID during the period of time where it's presumed that if they had COVID and they were working, that it's related, then there could be death benefit that you're not receiving and you need to reach out to us. We hope this discussion has been helpful to you. We're sorry to hear about your loss, but you can reach out to us if you have questions, and we're here.
We don't want you to be there without anyone. Please give us a call. We could provide help for you. This might be something that would at least get you through the hard period to start your life. So give us a call. We'll explain it all to you. If you are in this situation, reach out to us and we'll be glad to answer any questions.